Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome once again, as always, to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. You join me today, sat in the old jalopy on a random car park somewhere in my hometown of Wigan. And today, folks, the location doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter if the weather isn't all that great, because today I'm going to be doing another pie review for you. And today, folks, I'm going to be taking a look at Whittles Pie Shop, which is up in Pemberton, in my hometown of Wigan, and it comes highly recommended, especially by a gentleman by the name of Nick from Pem. He always comes on, and every time as I do one of these pie reviews, he says, "You need to try Whittles, Mr H. They're really good, and apparently their items of comestibility are second to none." Now, before I jump into taking a look at one of Whittles' items of comestibility, a mate and prater pie, of course, I'll give you a little bit of history. The pie shop closed down about 14 years ago. The fella who owned it, he decided he wanted a change of career. So he closed the shop, he retained all the equipment, and it's lucky that he did, because during the pandemic, his daughters, his twin daughters, Grace and Hannah, they lost their jobs. They was working bars in Liverpool, and obviously with lockdown, the hospitality industry got hit pretty hard, and they lost the jobs. They had to let them go. So what they decided to do was come up with the idea of selling pies again. Now, although he decided to change career, he'd let the pie shop out to Galloway's. He'd given the lease over to them, which is one of the bigger hitters of pies and bakeries here in Wigan. Anybody who's from Wigan will have heard of Galloway's. So the shop was still there, and the equipment was still there. However, Galloway's was still sitting on the lease. They couldn't just tell them to move, obviously. So what they did, they decided to sell pies out the back of a van. They was going round to little works and things, and they was doing it, no doubt, all socially distanced and all that kind of good stuff. And it was a big success for them. So they decided to start selling them out the back of the shop, which Galloway's was leasing. A little bit cheeky, really, but that's what they was doing. So in the end, they found it was such a success that they decided, hey, let's not go back to bar work. Instead, once the lease runs out, we'll tell Galloway's that we don't want to lease the shop to them anymore, and we'll take over. And that's what they did this last weekend, which is about 5 days ago as I'm making this video. Now, apparently the pies were cheap as chips when there was takeout. There was £1.40, £1.50. Nick, if you're watching this, which I'm sure you will be, you can actually tell me the price of the pies. That has changed. They have increased in price, which is fair enough, really. They've now got overheads, haven't they? Anyway, that's a bit of a backstory of the pie shop that we'll be reviewing today, which is a nice little story, really. It's good to see that Whittles are back in Wigan. I think the 4th generation now of selling pies, which is pretty good going, especially out of the same premises. So, without further ado, we'll take a look at the premises now, as always, and then we'll review a mate and prater pie from Whittles Bakery. So, welcome back, folks. Now, I trust your review that much, Nick, because I've skipped breakfast and decided to go straight in for the pie. So that's how much I'm trusting that this is going to be good. And when I went into Whittles, they was just bringing a fresh batch out of the oven, which I always like to see. A fresh pie, you can't beat it, can you? And as such, I brought it for a little drive round up to this car park and just let it cool down a bit. And as I was driving, I was getting all the smell of the pie, and my stomach was doing those little somersaults once again, and my mouth was watering. So let's take a look at it, shall we? It comes in a plain white paper bag, and it comes in a tin. It's deep filled, and there it is. Da 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 da. Just look at that, Nick. I bet your mouth's watering too, isn't it? Now, I'll get it out the tin and we'll do the old hand test, the Wigan pie hand test. Can you hold it in your hand without it collapsing and falling apart in your hand? And yes, you can. So it's a pass for that. But, as always, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, isn't it? Or the tasting. And that's what we're going to do now. Today's item of comestibility, sadly, Nick, it didn't cost me £1.40 or £1.50, which you've been quoting. It cost me £2.25, which is understandable. They now have overheads having a shop, and it's just been refurbished and all that kind of good stuff. It's a bit different when you're just selling out the back of a van or out from the back of your premises. But I've just cut into it now, and we'll take a look inside. And look at it. Chock full of meaty, potatoey goodness. I'll just put that down there now. We'll take a bite into it, shall we? Because I'm really looking forward to this. Because as I say, every time I've done a pie review video, Nick's jumped straight on and said, not as good value or not as good as Whittles, so it's got a lot to live up to, this pie. I can see where you're coming from, Nick. The pastry's lovely. Not too thick, not too dry. It's just right. And the consistency of potato and meat is bob on. The only little criticism that I'm going to say is I can taste the salt in the pie. And speaking personally, this is just me personally, some people like it with a bit of a kick. I don't. So sadly, it loses half a mark on that. But other than that, it's bloody scrumdiddly-umptious, as a former Wiganer used to say. You can't beat that, can you? And as you can see, I can't put it down. However, it does have a little bit of a kick to it because of the salt, and as such, I'm going to have a quick swig of Pepsi Max. I don't know. Wigan brekkie, eh? 2 meat and potato pies and a can of Coke. Or in my case, a can of Pepsi Max. So what, Potters? What am I going to give it? Well, as I say, I can't fault anything else, but it does lose half a mark because of that bit of a salty kick for me personally. As such, I'll give it 4.5 pies. And there we go, Potters. That was Whittles Pies of Pemberton. A little bit of history behind the shop. I'm going to finish this off now. So, until the next time, from myself, Mr. H, it is bye-bye for now.